Okay. Before we even get to the preview and things, let me chat a little about the notes down here. Let me get out of here, hopefully for a minute. Maybe, oh, there we go. Like, Hardy, where are you at? Okay. So right at the top of Classroom, there is a blank copy of the notes if you forget until later and need to get them down. All the notes from this current packet that we're in, we've got all those. And if you need the ones from earlier in the packet, because that stuff shows up on quizzes sometimes, that's on the one right below it here. So anything you need notes is right on the front stream of Classroom. Okay, let's get down to business. So let me get the notes out of the way for a moment. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. So here's we got to chat first. There's my form. Slope goes in the M slot. Y-intercept goes in the B slot. So once I have that, depending on the information I'm given, I've got to figure out, and I apologize, a couple of these graphs are a little bit sketchy at best. So I look, remember, we've got to find places that our graph is going through those intersection points, okay? Like an intersection you drive through or something like that. Sometimes they're fairly easy to find. Sometimes. Okay, like they are here. So what we've got to do when we're doing this, and we're going to add one more little piece to our notes in this part, even though we'll see it again coming later, and we'll have it again if it's in our notes, is that slope is rise over run. And again, rise meaning we're going up or down. If it's a positive, if we're going up, it's positive. If we're going down, it's negative. And our run, if we're going right or left, if I go right, it's positive. If it's left, it's negative. So once I've got those 2 points, all I've got left to do at this time to find my slope part of this is to go, okay, how many do I have to go up to get aligned with this? In this case, I went up 1. And how many did I go to the right? 1, 2. And that's also positive because I went to the right. So I've got my M. Okay, I've got my slope. My y-intercept part, again, here's the y-axis. Okay, I got the y right here. That point where my graph crosses the y-axis is my B, my y-intercept. So I went down 1 to get there. So my B is -1. Once I have the 2 pieces, I've got my M, I've got my B. I'm just going to plug them in. I'm done. There's going to be nothing else to do. Y equals M, 1/2, X, and then again, the plus B just means put your B term there. If you put plus -1, that would be A-okay. You can do that. That's an okay thing to do. But that's what we're trying to get to. The only exception to that is if we have a horizontal or a vertical line. So let's actually grab our notes here. We're going to get ourselves a little bit of assistance. On page 5 of our notes, if we're looking, we notice, and I'm going to go this way so we can actually see, maybe, oh, it's going to be tight. If we have a line going side to side, that's just y equals and the number it goes through. If we're going up and down, That's x equals, it's just the number we're going through. So if I apply that here, here's my line, y equals, and yep, we're going right through the 2. Y equals 2, you're done. That's kind of nice. Okay, nothing else I have to do. Number 3, so if this is at 0, I went left 2, but it's going up and down, it's vertical. So that's going to be x equals -2. Which again, you've got it right in your notes. So if you would need to, you just go to your 3-4 notes. You'd have examples there. You see the number and you're done. The only other type of slope we had when we were doing our equations was if we had a little chart, and we have that in here too. Nothing different. Let's find that right. I'm looking myself through things because I took my notes apart. That was my first mistake. Okay. So if I look at my notes, I'm like, okay, the y-intercept is the one where x is 0. So here's the one where x is 0. So that's my b. That's my clue. Wherever x is 0, that's going to be my y-intercept. And then I go back to my notes again, and I go, okay, so we got that. Oh, and then here's the equation for slope. I just picked 2 points. So I'm going to pick these 2 since I'm not using them for anything. And I notice when I'm looking in my notes, so we got x1, y1, x2, y2, and I got this formula here. So I look and I'm like, okay, I got to follow the formula. So I'm going to do y2, so 5, minus y1. And I'm going to do x2 minus x1. So I've got it right here. That's why I said, if you don't have your notes updated, that'd be a nice thing to have. Because then I can get that in there and be set. Because now I have my m and I have my b. And I can write my equation. Y equals mx. And again, my b is negative. If you put plus negative, that'd be okay. And I get my 3. So those are the 3 possibilities you'd be looking at tomorrow. Okay? One where I'm having to calculate it, or a couple where I'm looking. But if you've got your 3.4 notes, you have examples of all of them there. So I go down a little further. What's that? That? So, graph the line accurately. So you're like, all right, let's see. What do we got? What do we got in here on graphing? Got to find my 5. There it is. So what have I got in my help? I'm going to do a little folding here. Just a second. There we go. Okay. Identify the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, there's my slope. There's my y-intercept. I got this. Plot the y-intercept. So there's my y-intercept. Positive 3. I go to where y equals positive 3, I put it down. Step 1, well, step 2 actually, done. Once I get here, step 3. Is your slope a fraction? Yes, it is. So now, start at your y-intercept and do your rise over run up to right 5. So quick reminder here. We like to have 3 dots. 2 dots is not the end of the world, but 3 dots is better. Yeah, if I run out of room, I can just do the opposite of both of these. So if I start here and I go down 2, and then I go left 5, we still have 3 points that are on the line. But like I said, even if you have 2, as long as the 2 dots are put in the right spot, you're going to be okay. So nothing terrible there. And we just got done chatting about these. X equals lines are always vertical. Got that right here. Again, in the notes. I'm going to keep saying it over and over in this video. Have your notes updated. It will make your life easier. Y equals -4. Again, see right there. We got a y equals. So we put 2 graphs on one, but that's okay. As long as we get them marked, we're good. So I get to the last one. I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't look like the right form. What is going on here? Once again, I look at my notes in that section. And I find something that's very similar. And I'm like, ooh, if y is not by itself, we divide by whatever numbers with y, and then it's going to look like the rest. So that's what I'm going to do. The number with y is 4. So I'm going to divide everything by 4. There's my y equals. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Don't lose your x. -4 divided by 4 is -1. Make my slope a fraction. Slide back over here for a sec. So again, that number on the end is your y-intercept. So I'm going to go on my y-axis. I'm going to go to -1. Give me a dot. Then I'm going to do my slope. Positive, I'm going to go up 2. Positive on the bottom. I'm going to go right 1. I'm going to go up 2 and right 1 from the first dot. I'm going to go up 2 and right 1 from the first dot. Okay? 2 right 1, up 2 right 1. They all look like they're lining up nice. We'll get that in there and grind. But again, in my notes, I got examples of all of it. Speaking of having examples in my notes, now here I look and I'm like, oh, I get down a little further. We're all the way back to 3-1. You're like, hey, wait a minute, Hardy. Why are we all the way back to 3-1? Because this whole unit still has to be part of what we're doing. So I look and I'm like, okay, what does this stuff mean? Got my examples. Very first thing at the top of the notes. This number in the parentheses is the x value. So all this is telling me to do is take this expression, wherever x shows up, plug that number in. I can put that in my calculator. -4 times 0 plus 1 is 1. And I'm done. Nothing fancy I got to do. And so if I get the first one, I'm probably going to get them all, because now all that changes is the x value. Everything else stays exactly the same. -4 times 5 plus 1. Let the calculator help. -2, you know what we're going to do. So all this funky notation means is plug the number in the parentheses in for x, tell me what the answer is, and you're good. Nothing too shabby. We got examples. Ooh. What about this crazy graph stuff that's going on here? Okay. Let's bump this up a little. Same section in the notes on the front page. Okay, so what does this mean when it's like find F4 and all this? It still means that's the x value. So I'm going to follow till I get to x is -4. Here's the question. What's y equal when I'm there? I'm like, I don't know, let's go. What's the y value here? I follow it back to the y-axis and get my answer. Okay, so go to the x value, find your graph, because here, if x is -4, here's where x is -4, anywhere along here, here's where that runs into my graph at -4. If I follow it back to y, that's where the answer is, okay? We're following it back to figure out that value. And so I'm going to do the same thing for 1. I'm going to go to where x is 1. Okay, x is 1 right here. Follow it to the graph. What's the y value? When I get there, if I go back to the y-axis, the y value is right here at 3. And that's the only way we can do that on this one. There's not an equation to plug into. I gotta follow it to the graph and see what the y value is. So that's how those would work. And you kind of see as we're messing with these. If I've got my examples, if I've done the practice, which would be good because you could turn that in and get points tomorrow too. This isn't going to be anything that's going to be too rough. Okay, so we go to functions. You're like, oh, 3, 2. Alrighty, we're still in that first part of the notes. We're over to page 2 in the notes. So I look and I go, okay, explain if this set of points is a function. Do we have function stuff? We do. There we go. So I look. Remember, with functions, as long as the x values are all different, then it's a function. So if I look at just the x values, and they're all different, all you're doing is looking at those numbers I circled. If they're all different, it's a function. Yes, sir? Yes, but that'd be the exact same point. So that wouldn't come in as much handy. But when I get to the second one, okay, this is no, because the ones, the x equals ones will even say repeat. If y's repeat, we don't care. Notice on the first one, the 2's repeated. I didn't care. Why? Because they're not x's. When we're doing functions, all we care about are the x's. And it says that in our examples as well. And so then the last part, again, page 2 of the notes, if we need some help, is discussing domain and range. Domain is just listing off my x's. Range is just listing off my y's. So I'm like, okay, so my little scribble here, my brace, list off all of the x values. That's it. Range, list off all the y values. That's it. You're done. No algebra. No calculating nothing. Just writing down the x's and the y's. And we're good. So as we keep rolling, because we're almost done with the review part here. Again, more of this than there is on the quiz, just so we can kind of touch on everything and make sure we're ready for everything. When we're doing slope, yes, the equation will be right on your quiz. That'll be helpful. So rise over run, we've chatted about already. How many did I go up? 1, 2, 3, 4. I went up 4. And right 1, 2, which is also positive. But when you do slope, you've got to make sure it's simplified. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So make sure we get this to 2, or 2 over 1. That would actually be very good as well. But that's really all we're doing with these. Up 2, positive, right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now be careful here. You're like, wait, that's the same as the last one. No, it's not. 2 over 4, if I go to my calculator, is 0.5. Again, don't go to decimals. We don't use decimals on slope. This is where, again, we had in the notes, we did the notes, math, there's the math button, and enter twice, and it will give you the reduced form of the fraction. And we've got an answer. Graph a line with a slope of 0. Slope of 0 means it's just going side to side. That's it. That's all you have to do. I don't even care if you draw a graph with it. If you show me it goes side to side, that's 0. You've got it in your notes. Undefined just goes up and down. And again, you have that in your notes, but oh, there it is. We've got that in the notes as well. Okay. Between the points, you've got your formula. All you got to do, label your x's, label your y's, and literally substitute in. That's it. Straight up, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. We do a little subtracting. 8 divided by 2 is 4. If you want to make it 4 over 1, you could. But make sure, again, that we're reducing as fully as we can. If I just do the basics, which is really all I need on these, y2 minus y1, make sure that that negative gets there too. Your minus is not the same as that negative is. x2 minus x1. What happens when you minus a negative? Yeah, this really becomes plus. So this is, when I do 4 minus negative 3, okay, that's going to be like 4 plus 3, which is 7. Negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. Negative 1. And we're in business. All this stuff goes together. And again, I'll keep saying it, the quiz will not be as long as this, like with the number of problems. A couple from each of these sections, yes. Yes, that'll happen. But saying that it's going to be every single one of these and like 25 problems, yeah, not happening. Okay. Applications. We saw this on quiz 1. So if this was a dilemma, Let's make sure it's not again. So I go back in my notes. I, again, have lost one of my pages in my notes. Why did they go away? Well, I will find my notepad for that later and put that in. So here, find the rate of change. Don't forget your labels. Okay. We're going to pick any 2 points you want. These are coordinate points. We're going to do the exact same thing that we just did in the last ones. These are my y's. These are my x's. So if I've got to flip back and forth, I'll do that. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to do my y2 minus my y1. I'm going to do my x2 minus my x1. So 4 minus 2 is 2. 20 minus 10 is 10. Okay? Reduce, 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 people. So you're like, okay, so if I get my fraction reduced, it says don't forget labels. This is x, this is y. When I'm doing this, this is y, this is x. So I go, okay, so it's $1 for 5 photos. Okay, so when I'm labeling x's and y's, just kind of make sure that you're putting those labels on there. That's going to be the biggest thing that we're doing. And I'm going to get to do the same thing over here, except they're going to give me the points. So I do the same thing. It just looks different. So y2, y1, x2, x1. Still using that same formula. So this can be like 4 straight problems. I got the formula that's given to me. All I got to do is subtract x2 minus x1, y and x, subtract those. I think that's going to reduce. Again, math, enter, enter. So now, remember, this is y, this is x. Y is height. X is time. So let's say you do that whole problem, you plug it in, you reduce it, and then you just forget the labels. You're still going to get like 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4. So I mean, it's not bad, but trying to remember the labels is a good thing. Is a good thing to make us get into a good spot with those. These, we've got these again. You're like, where? 3, 4 word problems right there. You got the whole thing right there at the top of page 6. John has saved $30 for a new gaming system. Well, John, you're not very far. He's saving at a rate of, let me change colors here, $10 a week. Per week. A week. That's where your ox is going to go. So John has $30 plus he's saving $10 every week. So both the numbers are going to be included. Now, to graph the equation, I have so many ideas here I could give you. I'll give you 2. One of the ideas would be to make yourself a chart. X stands for the weeks, because there's my x-axis, there's the weeks. Y stands for the amount of money that he has. And so I literally would just plug these numbers in for X. 10 times 0 is 0, plus 30 is 30. 10 times 1 is 10, plus 30 is 40. I could plug them in my calculator too. 10 times 2 is 20, plus 30 is 50. And my last one would be 60. But if you really want to be slick, you could. You have the option. We put this in your notes too. You could go to y equals and plug that in and do second graph 030, 140, 250, 360. And you could even make more if you wanted to. So it's up to you on how you're going to run that. And we're going to go ahead. We're going to get those in. Draw a line through. And they have one more question for us. What is the y-intercept? What's the y value when x equals 0? $30. Because it's right there. And again, what does it represent? Bless you. Yeah, because if I look at the very first sentence, John has saved $30 for a new gaming system. Like the first sentence, you could even just copy the first sentence here, and that would be good. That's typically going to be how it works. Whatever you've done at the start that doesn't have x, that's going to be your y-intercept. That's going to be the value you plug in. So nothing, again, that we don't have right in our notes with an example. Even helping the calculator button presses. I'm just saying. Oh, the rewind. And yes, I'll say it again. If you have back notes from Unit 1 and Unit 2, use them, okay? If not, we got you under control here. Simplify the expression. Combine like terms. Find my x squareds first. Add them up, but watch the signs. So here, that is -7 plus 1. -6x squared. 6x and -8x. 6 minus 8 is -2x. And that is the only plain number. Okay? So just because it's combined doesn't mean it's plus every time. It can be other signs of things. If we see parentheses, we're multiplying. -5 times 2 is -10. I see 2 x's, so that is x squared. -5 times -3. If you're not sure, put it in the calculator. It's okay. -15. I do have an x still, so don't lose your x. Do I distribute the 5x out to here? No, it is not in parentheses. It just gets to stay the way it is. But once the parentheses are gone, once I've done my multiplying, I look and I'm like, that's the only x squared, so we'll leave it. These are both x's though, and they're both positive, so it's 15 plus 7. And I've got it. Show work on this. Let's say you do your distributing, you forgot the x squared, and you made it x, and you combined them. You'll still get points for all the other steps. It'll just be that one step. So again, anything you can show me, please, please, please do it, because it will make things easier. Down the home stretch we come. You're like, dang, Hardy, we've done a lot of stuff. Dang, even a little bit of Unit 2. So what I'm going to do here at the start is I'm going to do one in each section just to make sure we got time for everything. And I'll go back and chat some other stuff if we need to. Solve each equation by showing all work. Remember, there's 2 answers. Why? Because there's 2 equations. First equation, just rewrite what you see. Second equation, change the sign of just the answer. Not this, just the answer. And then solve them both. We've been doing two-step equations for a while now. So I get my x term alone, I do my opposite of plussing 3, and you can get decimals here. If you do, do not freak out. We're okay with that. Same here, it's going to be the exact same two steps. Minus my 3 first. Divide by 2, again, fractions. No worries. We're going to be all right. And so when you're doing these, the only catch can ever be if you have something else going on outside the absolute value. I'll give this hint before we move on to the bottom part. You want to get that alone first, then split it in two. So I'll write what the two equations look like, but I'm not going to solve them because I, again, want to make sure that we get to the other parts. But we don't have to do that first step every time, just in case there's something hanging out on the outside. As we move to the inequalities, let me say this. Even if you don't graph, even if you just solve them both, do that. Because it will get you points. And points is the name of the game here. Again, at this point, I'm assuming we're doing pretty good with our two-step equations, hopefully. That's why I'm not talking a lot through that part. I'm just kind of writing them so we can see. Don't lose your arrows. Now, if you remember back to when we were graphing, if you had an AND statement, those are the ones that you'd have the endpoints and we just kind of color in the middle. So if I take that advice here, I get my closed circle at 3 because of the or equal to. I get my open circle at -5, and I'm just going to trust the process and color in the middle and call it good. But if the word in the middle changes, I still do all of my equation solving the same. Nothing is changing until the very end. So I undo the +2. I undo the multiply by 3. And yes, I know it's repetitive. It is not the most exciting stuff in the world, but once you get the hang of it, like other things in life that you just kind of got to do, and you just get used to doing it, you're like, all right, I can get that done. Here we go. If or is in the middle, or is the one that typically the graphs go out from each other. X is less than -2. Follow the arrow even. The arrow says go left. That's what we're going to do. Or X says, hey, it's greater than 2. Greater than gets bigger. The arrows go out. I'm done. But again, even if this is the only part you get done, good. And my clock's a couple minutes fast, so we're going to make it. I wish they'd get it on time, but that's okay. Last two. Don't get freaked out that there are multiple variables. Solve for y. Okay. What am I doing to it? Multiplying it by 8. Divide everything by 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 24 divided by 8 is 3. One step, and you're there. And it's the same thing on our last one. What's the opposite of minusing 5x from something? Adding it. But be careful, this does not make this 14x. This has x, this does not. 9 plus 5x, or 5x plus 9. As I said, the quiz itself is not this many questions, but you want to be prepared for everything. Make sure you have your notes. Have the notes. Get an extra copy. Borrow it from a friend. Look on Classroom. But have those ready to use tomorrow. I appreciate your patience.